All right, welcome to the Ramblin' Man podcast, episode 7. I am here with my guest, Chris Mango. I'll let you just give a little bit about yourself to start with, and then we'll get into some topics and stuff.
Appreciate it, Max. My name is Chris Mango. I'm a Brazilian Jit Jitsu professor and MMA coach, black belt under Professor Jacolino of Gracie, Barra. I met Max through my gym. We've spoken a few times, and he invited me to be here, so I appreciate it, and happy to be here with you guys.
Awesome. My first question for you is just, how did you start with mixed martial arts or martial arts in general?
Sure. As a little boy, I was always fascinated by martial arts. My grandfather taught combatives in the military. My dad was a martial artist. And from a really young age, I was always very fascinated. If the movie was on, it was martial arts, something like that, Bruce Lee, anything, I'd watch it. And begged my parents to put me in martial arts. I started karate and boxing and things like that when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And always had striking arts in my life from a young kid. And the way I transitioned into jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts, wrestling and all that, was the UFC. I was watching it all the time, and I would see these guys who were phenomenal strikers or came from different karate backgrounds or traditional martial arts backgrounds. And I just saw these guys coming in that were wrestlers, just dumping them and manhandling them around. And it's not that I thought I would do this professionally or anything, but I just remember I was about 12 years old, and I asked my dad if I can kind of get into some wrestling or grappling. And I looked in the phone book. Of all things, I looked up grappling. That's what I looked up. And anyway, the rest is history. I started jiu-jitsu. I never stopped from there, and over time, mixed everything together, got together with the right people and coaches, and I'm still here now doing the same thing.
Awesome. So it's just something that's interesting to me, was because for myself, I was never an athletic person.
Okay. That's shocking. If you look at you, people would figure otherwise.
From a young age, I played video games.
Okay.
I played sports, but I would play with the bugs and shit. And then my parents took me out. So then I just started playing video games and stuff. And I started playing football in high school, but because I started late, I felt behind.
Okay.
So no matter how much I practiced, I felt like, oh, everybody has an edge up on me. Because they've been playing since Pee-wee football.
You could read the plays.
And they're yeah, and then I was playing linebacker, and I'm like, how are they reading this? I don't know what's going on. Everybody's moving, and I'm freaking out. So after that, I found CrossFit to get better for football.
Okay.
I got faster, I got stronger, I lost weight because I played video games and stuff like that. So I was a little bit on the bigger side.
Okay.
And then from there, I was like, screw football. I don't like relying on the idea of I have to have the politics of the coach liking me to get the reps to play. So the idea of being able to better myself individually to be as good as I want to be was really what drove me to CrossFit to begin with. So then now that I've tried Brazilian Jit Jitsu, I feel like it's the same. The same principles. I can be as good as I want to be as long as I work towards it.
Exactly.
So it's just interesting to me because I wish when I was young, it makes me wish that I did wrestling in high school.
We all do.
Yeah. And I had my uncle wrestled, and he would always tell me you should do it. And I never even really tried.
Sure.
But now in hindsight, I'm like, man, I wish I wrestled, because then at least I would have some kind of base going into jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely.
So then how do you feel so you started from a young age, how do you feel like it's different from the striking side to the ground game, jiu-jitsu stuff?
Sure. So, when I started, I was younger than everybody. There were no other kids on the mat. So you'd think everybody would help you out, but everybody was kind of hard on you and kind of practiced their techniques all the time. So the difference was, I'm in a grappling situation here, and I can't be evasive, I can't be elusive, they're on me. And really the main difference is not to panic. The main difference between the grappling and the striking from the beginning was, for me, the size difference, but also that I recognize these techniques work on larger people. Because when I was doing karate or boxing, if I was a kid, couldn't like strike with a guy who was 6'3". I couldn't reach him, nothing. I was a kid.
Yeah.
But in jiu-jitsu, sometimes they'd show me a little something, and I'd try it, and it would work. So I realized right away, you know, I see why these guys are able to manhandle the strikers that aren't used to any kind of grappling, because you have a particular set of skills that are not widely understood, and it almost feels like you're a fish out of water. And it feels like that for a while. After a while, you get comfortable, and then you can swim, and you feel comfortable in that grappling situation. Striking, it was, you know, punch, punch, kick, kick, move. If I get in trouble, I try to circle around, get away. If someone's on top of you, you can't just run away. You can't just stand up. So it kind of forces you to learn these techniques and apply them efficiently. Otherwise, you're just going to sink.
And that's kind of my experience. And it is like, I've done the kickboxing classes and I've done jiu-jitsu. I feel like kickboxing is easier to pick up. It's almost like I feel like the reps you put in pay off to how efficient you can be.
Sure.
So like as long as you practice and you get speed, as long as you're doing it right. Whereas jiu-jitsu, like I started going just to no-gi class, and it's like obviously a harder class.
Absolutely.
And
it's faster.
And I just feel like for the first like 2 months, I'm like not even sure what's going on.
That's totally normal.
Yeah.
I tell people when they first start jiu-jitsu, don't get discouraged. You're gonna have to see things a few times before you grasp them. You're gonna have to try them a few times before you can grasp them. If you stick with it, it will get easier. Enjoy the ride. Try to learn something. Try to retain something. If you forget, you're gonna come back to it anyway. Nobody starts jiu-jitsu and remembers every technique, every class they went to. Nobody. We forget more jiu-jitsu than we know. It's just something people say. You know, I've probably seen more jiu-jitsu and been taught more jiu-jitsu than I use, and I can even retain or teach. Nobody has all the jiu-jitsu. There's so many different styles, techniques, and it's always evolving, it's always growing, so you're always gonna learn. You're never gonna stop learning. Grappling arts never really stop growing.
Yeah.
You know, over time, and even going back throughout humanity, people have wrestled. Every culture has a wrestling background. It's in your blood. Whether you like it or not, or you know it or not, I promise, no matter what your ethnic background is, where you come from, you have grappling in your blood. So you already have a leg up because it's genetic.
Yeah.
Over time and centuries, the grappling arts have become more and more efficient, technical, and some things that work are left in the past and they come back around. So you're always learning, you're always adapting. The best advice, like I said, just enjoy the ride, have fun. I've never seen anybody stick with jiu-jitsu for a long time and not get good. I haven't seen it. If they were consistent, they dedicated to the classes, took care of their body, I promise you're gonna get good.
Yeah. And like that's the thing is like I felt like going in. Well, the first time I went, I felt it's weird because like as human beings we get used to what we're comfortable with.
Sure.
So you're used to working out a certain way, even if you're like training hard. I'm used to training hard, right?
Yeah.
I trained for CrossFit competitiveness, and it's like really crazy, like 4 hours of training a day and all this. So like the first time I went to class, I'm like anxious, I'm like nervous, and I'm like, but why? Like I've done stuff that's harder.
Sure.
Like I've done, and it's just like the whole new element.
Absolutely.
So then when I go, and then even now, like if I go, I feel like I should have an advantage, having some kind of strength or stamina.
Sure. You will, it'll come later.
Exactly. But when you don't know anything,
Sure.
it doesn't help you. And my biggest thing is like trying not to use my strength to my advantage.
Sure.
And use technique as the main driver for when I do things.
Sure. It's different than the working out, because in working out, you have to explode. You have the harder, the better. But if you think about it, form's important, right? So that's still a technique, and that's strength within the technique. It applies the same to martial arts, grappling, wrestling. Without the technique, you don't know what you're doing. But then as you learn the techniques, your strength, your timing, and your physical attributes used properly in the direction that technique needs them to be used is what is ideal. So a strong athlete coming in, there's a slight disadvantage if they can't keep the discipline to not use their strength, because then they might develop habits of exploding through techniques they didn't have to explode so much, or as if they weren't using those muscles as efficiently. Where when someone's small and they first start, they have no choice but to use the techniques. However, like I said, if it's all in your mind. You could play like a little guy and be a big guy. So if you use that mindset to your advantage and say, okay, I'm not gonna freak out and burn myself out. I'm gonna use my body efficiently and try to use these techniques to my advantage. When you learn those techniques and grasp them and you can implement them into your game, you being a strong, athletic guy will be a benefit. There's a big myth in jiu-jitsu that you don't have to be strong, you don't have to be athletic. You should try to be as physically healthy and sound to your potential as you can, because someone else has the techniques too. And maybe they're a better athlete. Mm-hmm. So when the techniques equal, who's gonna win? The more conditioned athlete, the stronger athlete. It's strength and athleticism within the technique. If I have to choose techniques or strength, I'm gonna choose technique. But if I can have both, I'm gonna choose that every time.
I feel like it's like a tool that improves your game more than anything.
Yes.
Like if you think about fighters, like who has stamina, who has strength, you know, you obviously want to be the most well-rounded athlete possible.
Of course.
The one thing that is interesting to me, though, that I've noticed in jiu-jitsu especially is that body type is not as important because the strengths favor you differently.
Sure.
Whereas like someone like myself who has long arms and legs and stuff versus someone who's shorter limbs, it's the way that they go about
learning
doing things is different.
That's what I'm saying. You're never going to use all the jiu-jitsu because it's not conducive to your body type or your style. But we have legends that are short and stocky like fire hydrants, and some of them are lanky, skinny guys. So absolutely, depending on your body type, you may favor a certain style or a certain game plan when you roll. Also, depending on who you're competing against. Mm-hmm. This all depends on your opponent. You might have long arms and be tall, but maybe, you compete against a guy who's even taller and longer. Now you may fight a little differently, right? Especially in MMA with reach and things like this. Yeah. And then skill sets involved changes that as well. You got to take that into consideration. I've never seen a body type that couldn't be used to defeat another body type. So it's not like, I've never seen a short, stocky guy beat a guy who's super big and muscular. No, I have. I've also seen, guys who are super round and, ultra heavy, just smash a guy who looks like Superman. So, it's really what you can do with your body, how you can implement your game plan. And then there's stylistic matchups that for some odd reason, this guy can't beat this guy, but this guy beats everybody else, or this guy beats everyone else. Sometimes A can beat B and B can beat C, but A can never beat C. Just stylistically, it doesn't work. So you got to be confident in your game, because there's people that have very basic, simple games who become world champions, and there's guys who have more techniques than I could even dream to teach you and never win anything. So, sound fundamentals is always important. And then jiu-jitsu is an art, it's not a science. There's definitely principles that we have to follow. There's rules, even rules of physics apply, but it is an art. And your style, you should be proud of that. You should just roll with it. What works for you works for you. And the better you get at it, and the more unique, the better too. Maybe nobody sees it before. Yeah. And you should catch people by surprise with a trick, So definitely your game's always going to change and evolve, and you should appreciate that and enjoy that while you're training.
So on the topic of fighting though, what do you feel like is an attribute that best suits like an MMA fighter?
One single attribute?
I know there could be any number of them.
Which one do you think is most important?
The most important.
I'm gonna say, I want to choose the right word. I know what it is. This would be, people call it heart, but you have to have courage. The heart's number one. I can give a guy all the techniques and make him the greatest athlete on earth. If he doesn't have the gravel in his gut to implement it, to overcome the stress or the natural fear that anyone's gonna feel when they go into a fight, it's all for nothing. he's never going to implement it at a high level. He may beat somebody because he's so far beyond athletically and they weren't that good to begin with. But at a high level, that stress, everybody's tough. Heart's number one. Heart and the ability to find gas in an empty tank. It's more mental and spiritual than you'd imagine. And you know, if you apply that to any other sport, it's the same. The best athlete doesn't always get the title as the greatest of all time. They're usually good athletes, but a lot of times it's somebody that was passionate, and they were passionate about winning at all costs. They wanted to be the best. They were almost obsessed with becoming the best.
Yeah.
So a fighter has to have heart, or else everything else is. Like I said, if you can't find gas in the empty tank, the car won't start. You know, you could make it look as pretty as you want on the outside, soup the engine up, and give it everything you can. But if you don't gas it up, if it can't do that, it's not going anywhere.
And the only reason I think about that is because I haven't watched a lot of MMA in the past probably 5 years, except the past 2 years I've been watching it more.
Okay.
And I like to, the way I look at sports in general is I like to look at like what makes people so good.
Sure.
And I'm not an expert, but I mean, the people that I am drawn to are the people that have a lot of fortitude and are smart athletes.
Sure.
And I feel like a lot of times the smarter athlete is sometimes the ones that do the best.
Sure.
And the ones that stick out to me is like John Jones, you know, DC's really good about that. Just the way he commentates as well, you can tell he's very perceptive.
He's analytical,
yeah.
Absolutely.
But in the same sense, like the fight that happened on Wednesday night, yesterday, did you happen to watch it?
I didn't see it. Which one?
It was Anthony Smith and Glover Teixeira.
What happened there?
Anthony came out kind of aggressive, not like the aggressor, but pushing the pace.
Okay.
And his corner was very yelling the whole time about like yelling combinations and stuff. And Glover took an approach of he was taking a beating, but everything was calculated.
It's grinding him out.
It was all about hitting the counter off. Every time he came in, Glover was trying to counter off of it. And then eventually, Anthony got stunned. And then the fight, basically, the last 3 rounds were basically 10-8 rounds.
Oh, wow.
Glover was just... People are debating if the ref should have stopped it sooner because he was getting beat. Like, he was getting taken to the ground and he was ground and pounding him. He was showing that he had his wits about him, and he still was communicating, still trying to defend himself. He obviously had, like, some fortitude.
Sure, he's a tough dude.
But at one point, it was the 4th round, it had ended, and he's like, I'm losing teeth. And then his corner's like, focus. And like, after that, the fight finished. Now, I obviously fortitude is an important thing.
Sure.
But I don't know, it's just weird because like to me it's like you obviously want to be like stone cold, but also like it made me feel like maybe the corner was at fault for continuing him to fight. I don't know. It was just weird.
It could be, you know, that sounds to me like what you were alluding to. It's not only fortitude, but also the wits about you to know how I should approach this opponent. It's going to change from opponent to opponent. So, you know, Glover probably figured, well, this guy's younger. He is an explosive athlete. And maybe he's going to come out aggressive. Maybe he planned on that. Some guys are really good at grinding people out. They could take a beating for 2-3 rounds, 2.5 rounds, and then for the last 2-3 minutes of the fight, they come after the guy because he's been exhausting himself, beating you up. The guy knows he's not going to finish me. I'm going to stay alive. I'm going to wait for him to get tired. I'm going to drag him into deep water. When he starts breathing, then I'm going to come forward. And there's some guys that's not their strategy typically, but maybe for a certain fight, that's the strategy they take. Maybe they have no choice. Maybe they feel off the bat, okay, I can't match this guy's strength, so but he's not finishing me and he's not hurting me, so let me let him work a little bit. Take me down, I'm gonna stand back up. Take me down, I'm gonna stand back up. A smart fighter is gonna know how to exhaust his opponent as well. Cooking people is huge, even especially in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Position before submission, that's all about wearing the guy down, bringing his energy meter down. I think all champions know how to do that. And whether they choose to apply that or not depends on the fight and the corner. As far as Anthony Smith's corner, you know, I didn't see the fight, but you know that I'm sure they care about him, but they've probably figured, hey, he's still defending himself. He can still pull something off. You know, was Glover tired or was he just fresh all the way through?
He looked pretty good, to be honest with me.
It's experience. That's a lot of experience. And, you know, Glover's been there a lot of times, so.
What I liked the most was Glover seemed like he could tell he was fucking him up.
Mm-hmm.
And he tried to go for a submission multiple times to keep from battering up too much.
Okay.
But Anthony kept protecting himself from a submission.
Sure.
Of course, he's not going to just roll over and just quit.
No.
Never. But you could, at the end, you could tell that he felt bad for the beating he had given him. It was like kind of like unnecessary.
He knew he had won. He knew he was over. Okay. You know. Go ahead.
The reason why I asked that too is because then I was a Tony fan going into this weekend. Mm-hmm. Did you watch the Gaethje?
I saw it. Yeah, I did.
Tony fight.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit.
You know, on paper, I thought, you know, Tony is a freak, wild man. Like he pushes the pace.
He's definitely tough. That fight proved.
I mean,
mental toughness.
Mentally, and like how many punches he took, and
he was still trying to win, and he was still crafty sometimes. He had little flickers of like he's still in this, you know. He's definitely a samurai.
So it was, that whole thing was interesting to me because then I see like Trevor Whitman in his corner, and what I liked the most was I have a lot of respect and like Gaethje in his corner a lot because of the commentary between them was. Justin was it was like a dialogue between the coach and the athlete. Sure. And it was like, he told Trevor's like, take 10% off. Like, you're trying to kill him every shot. You don't need to do that.
Sure, just score for now.
Yeah. And then, you know, at the end, he's like, don't get too comfortable because remember what happened last time. And then Justin responds, it happened twice, not once.
Yeah, see.
And then I'm like, that's like, to me, it blew my mind because like, he's on the last round of a fight. Sure. He should be exhausted. And he still is perceptive of like what's happened before
himself well
and what he needs to do to win.
Absolutely. And he ate some good shots.
He did.
So I mean, part of that guy's tough as nails. He's a juggernaut. And obviously him and his corner, they've probably been through a lot of fights together. They know the history. It's probably the team he's been with for a while. I don't know. Do you know if he's always been with that team?
I don't know. I was looking up Trevor Whitman today because I saw a clip actually of one of his other fighters was fighting. And it was the opposite of what happened with Anthony Smith. Was the fighter was like getting beat really bad. They called the round, and he comes to his corner, and then the athlete, I couldn't really hear him, but he says something. He has his head down, and then Trevor's like, he's done.
Yeah,
and it's like he just like knew in like his demeanor of his.
He knows his fighters.
Yeah,
sure.
So it was interesting to me because like the way it was different. And I have a lot of respect for Trevor now and Justin.
Oh yeah,
they're both like
definitely
good chemistry. Obviously, they know each other well. So how important do you feel like is like your corner and your coaching when it comes to especially something as crazy as fighting?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a fighter and a coach have to have a unique relationship. I mean, they have to feel comfortable enough with you to be honest about things. But also, I don't want to use the word fearful, but respectful enough of you as a coach to listen. And I'm not so sure that all fighters and all coaches can mix. I think sometimes two people have to have a certain chemistry from that coach and athlete standpoint. You definitely have to be close to your athletes. I'm very close to my fighters for sure. Everyone in my school I'm close to, but my fighters, absolutely. I've known a lot of them from young. When a guy joins my MMA team, I talk to them about personal things too. I need to know how their personal life is. I need to know if there's things they're dealing with. You know, these are somebody's personal life can ruin their career. It can ruin fights. You can have the best athlete ready to go, and something happens 2-3 days before, and you have to know what's going on to be able to calm the guy down or give him that motivation that he needs. Stylistically as well, every fighter's a little different. You better understand what's best for him, and he needs to understand how you guys together are working on that. You can't just teach everybody in the room the same.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, you know, run their fight camps almost identical with all their people. You can't do it that way. You know, you have to look at a fighter and assess where they're at. You have to look at what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you have to balance, obviously always improving, but you have to balance applying enough attention to these weaknesses, and that weakness doesn't necessarily have to be physical. The weakness can be a mental block. It could be they're injury prone. It could be they lack a physical attribute like flexibility or strength, or, you know, I think without that relationship, you're not going to have the best outcome.
Yeah.
You can get the best coach and the best fighter, but if they don't work together, nobody's training right. Nothing, you know, you can ruin a guy that way.
And I feel like that's any sport, I feel like, in general. I don't know if you've seen The Last Dance. Have you been watching that?
No.
I should just watching it. I'm not a basketball fan.
Okay.
But it's a documentary
about the Bulls. I heard about this. I was interested in watching this.
It is fantastic.
All right, yeah. I like that dynasty though. That was cool. Late 90s, the Bulls.
But it's kind of like, you know, the coach and understanding how
Phil Jackson.
Yeah. How you know, he had to manage his players. Each of them are different.
Sure.
Which Michael, I'm not a basketball person. I always respect athletes for their own regard, but knowing what I know about Michael now, he's like probably the best example of someone should aspire to and their discipline.
Sure. Absolutely.
You know, and it's like the mentality he had.
At all costs mentality.
And like, if you don't like it, it's because you don't know what it's like to win, is what he said.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It's the truth. It's like people like to think they know.
Sure.
But they don't.
Yeah.
But, you know, I also feel like Michael probably has had many conversations with Phil that he respected what Phil's decision was. And, you know, it's like the idea of, they talk about this in the documentary too, is before Phil got there was another coach. Mm-hmm. And his game plan was feed the ball to Michael.
Yeah.
When Phil got there, it was more of, you need to share the ball with the other players.
Sure.
So that you guys are more dynamic.
Yes.
And at first, he probably didn't think it was a good idea. But then when they're winning...
He didn't like that, right? He didn't like it.
Yeah, but then when they're winning, it's like, winning is what matters.
Sure. Result.
Yeah, so I feel like, you know, especially in CrossFit and stuff like that, what I see in this realm is there's a lot of people that claim to be coaches.
Okay.
And you can have knowledge, and you can put together a program that helps people achieve results.
Sure.
But coaching people is a different ballgame.
Leadership ability.
Exactly. So, you know, you have to be able to connect with the person.
Absolutely.
You have to know what kind of motivation they need.
Sure.
Some people like people that are hyped up.
Sure.
Some people don't.
Absolutely.
You know, some people
can't do it one way or the other.
Yeah.
They're one way. You can't try to become another way to hype yourself up. So I'm focused and excited.
And like, I know for me, like, that's my thing is like, you know, some people, I'm just a very laid back person. Not that I don't care about winning. I like to win.
Sure.
I'm competitive in nature. But I also value failure.
Sure.
If I lose, I'm not going to sit here and be like, blame other people. I need to assess what went wrong. Sure. How can I fix it? You
channel the energy.
Yeah.
I feel like those champions like Michael Jordan do that too.
Mm-hmm.
They're really hard on themselves when they lose, but it doesn't mean that they go punch holes in the wall or quit for a month. A lot of them are probably very good at channeling the energy. Another thing, you know, we missed before when we discussed fortitude is, where does that come from? Fortitude comes from something that gave you a drive to become someone who has fortitude, right? Maybe it's a fear of poverty. Maybe it's to prove yourself. Maybe it's, Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you listen to Michael Jordan speak, you can tell that he's got a winner's mindset and just this, like, a conviction.
Mm-hmm.
You can just, it kind of comes off him, you can tell. And that something fueled that from when he was young.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fighters, if you look at certain places, why is Dagestan have so many good fighters?
I'm assuming because it's impoverished.
It's a tough place,
mm-hmm.
and being a man of conviction and fortitude and work ethic is glorified there. And it's passed down from generation to generation. It's preserved, right? And also they have phenomenal wrestling, and it's been that way for thousands of years. And their combat athletics is high level. But if you look at it, they were given an upbringing that forced them to have conviction, forced them to be focused, forced them to not be lazy. I mean, I think when I saw a video, a boulder came down and blocked the highway, the citizens went and got rid of it. The guys all get together and they know what to do. Here, we're gonna do this, then get rid of the boulder.
Yeah.
You never see that here.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's something that drives people to be great a lot of times. And that's why you hear about sometimes somebody is so talented, it comes so easy to them that they squander the potential because they didn't have to work for it, or because they just were never put in a position to have to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that whatever's driving someone's important too. And a lot of these high performance athletes, it's no different than a person who's a highly efficient, high performing businessman or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
They have something in them driving them for greatness.
Yeah.
They're striving for it. And yeah, they probably have some luck. They probably have a leg up genetically, or they have the right coaching or the right team. A lot of that is a factor. You take a lot of guys who are phenomenal fighters. Okay, Mike Tyson. Would he have listened to any other coach but Customato? Maybe not. Maybe any other coach that met him, he would have been like, I'm not working with them. I don't want to go to the boxing gym and work hard. I'm going to go back and hang out with my friends, maybe. Mm-hmm. Customato and him had that chemistry, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the guy he needed to give him that proper direction, teach him how to channel the energy. You get people, what do they say, the NBA or the NFL, if everybody who should have been Michael Jordan played basketball, maybe you wouldn't even know who Michael Jordan is. Maybe there were 100 guys that were Michael Jordan's age when he got into the NBA who had they been trained or had the same conviction. Who knows? They had the coaching and who knows? They could have been the next Michael Jordan, but maybe they just played basketball a couple times. We're like, yeah, I'm good at it naturally, but I'm gonna go sit over here and do this, or I'm gonna play video games, whatever. And you never know. There's a lot of luck and circumstance involved in that too.
Luck is an interesting word because I don't believe in luck.
It's real, man.
I don't believe in luck because I think you create your luck.
Oh, you definitely give yourself a better chance, but there's always a little bit.
But no, that's an interesting thing about the culture we live in is
Sure.
definitely different in the U.S.
Sure.
We're so lucky to. It's like a gift and a curse. Is
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a gift to live here because you have everything so much easier,
Sure.
but it's a curse because, you don't, hardship and challenge, develops character.
Oh yeah.
And that's what drives people.
Sure.
If you don't have any hardships in your life or you don't experience things that challenge you,
Sure.
then,
What do you know about yourself anyway?
Exactly.
And, I feel like that hardship is what we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
where they find, all right, what I said earlier, you have to find gas in an empty tank. How do you do that if you haven't had to before?
Yeah.
Like, how do you even know you can? You don't know anything about yourself if it's too easy,
Mm-hmm.
I think some people, they don't really value that either in an athlete, because when things get tough or the exhaustion sets in, or everybody just wants to go home because it's the end of the game or the end of this fight, it's the fifth round. When those two guys look across from each other, if they're both dead tired and they're both, fighting a good fight, somebody's gonna find that gas and they're gonna go, and somebody isn't. There's gonna be a winner. Somebody's gonna win. And I feel like that's a major thing that separates athletes and champions as well from, why is a guy in the top 10 but never a champion?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just as much emotional as it is physical. Maybe they need that. This guy just had to do it at all costs, and maybe this guy's not as hungry.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta. It's a case-to-case thing, but it's definitely important to have it. The hardship is a benefit and also a curse. You look at like a country like we're talking about, Dagestan. You don't want your kids to have to be in that situation. Maybe those impoverished situations, didn't allow some kids to become the athletes they should have been.
Yeah.
Maybe. But, for the ones that were, they had to be tough. They had no choice. So, here in America, yeah, you see that. You see people just not be as hard-nosed because they didn't have to be. So, in a combat sport, it definitely makes a difference. But then you get some guys like, Tony Ferguson. I don't know what his background is per se, but I promise you that dude, he's got something inside of him driving him to be that tough.
Well, it's interesting though too, because like I always relate to CrossFit because CrossFit's kind of like mixed martial arts, MMA a little bit, but not. It's different in a different regard, but it's the same.
Individual, but team. You need people to help you get there,
yes.
But you have to be the one to step up.
And the people that are the best are the most iron-willed people.
Oh yeah.
I have noticed as well that those people at the top tend to be very smart individuals as well.
Sure.
You don't have someone who's stupid just end up at the top.
They wouldn't train smart enough.
Exactly.
They would train hard, but they wouldn't be smart enough and they wouldn't be as efficient to reach that path.
So it's just interesting because someone like myself, it's weird that I ended up in CrossFit, and I did good for what I was doing.
Sure.
But I am not, CrossFit has a disadvantage where there's no weight classes.
Sure.
So everybody's in the same division, women and men.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my wife hates it when I say this, but people that are shorter do have an advantage.
Range of motion.
Correct. So I am 6 foot, but I have really long arms, really long legs. So for me, push-ups, squats, and stuff like that, just are hard.
Bench press.
Anything like that.
Deadlift.
Range of motion. Actually, I'm okay.
No, I'm sure you're a strong dude. I'm sure you have a good deadlift. But think of it, the guys with the long torso and short legs, they come right up.
Mm-hmm. So I have a friend. We did the first episode together, Babak. He is a more gifted individual.
Okay.
And he's a shorter athlete. So for me, not taking away anything from him, but for me, I don't come from any natural good genetics besides being generally pretty strong to start with. But for me, to get where I was when I qualified for regionals, which it would be semi-pro, I guess. Mm-hmm. I trained very hard. Only focused on qualifying. Okay. And then the problem was when I qualified, then it was okay, I qualified, now what? Sure. It's I don't expect myself, I like to be realistic. I don't expect myself to show up and then just beat everybody's ass. Sure. Because it was already hard for me to make it. Okay. Now I'm going to show up and just try not to make myself look like a jackass. So it's just interesting because when it comes to fighting, at least, it's not, you don't really have that. Sure. People have different things. Obviously, the most well-rounded people, but you have people that look different. Tony is a weird example because Tony doesn't look muscular.
Yeah, but I promise he's strong.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He doesn't look if he was wearing regular clothes. And you saw him on the street. Sure. You wouldn't mind picking a fight with him if you didn't know who he was.
That's common in combat sports.
Of course, but then. You take someone like Francis Ngannou, you're not going to walk up to him and start something with him. Sure. But that's the example of in CrossFit, you don't have that. All the people that are at the top, they look the part.
They're weightlifters and all that. Sure.
And in MMA, you have people that are shaped different, built different, and then they just have this way of, building on what they're good at and working on their weaknesses. But it's just very interesting to me. I love this sport because it's it's like very like 3D chess, kind of like, you know, it's not just like
physical chess. Yeah.
It's not one thing.
No.
You know, you could be skilled, great. Can you last though?
Yeah.
And then, are you smart enough to have a game plan? So how important is game plan to a fighter in your experience?
Or we're talking about certain styles can match up poorly with each other. So, you know, this guy, opponent A, is better than opponent B in every facet except striking. So he's better everywhere, but this guy's a better striker. Is he going to try to wrestle this guy and take him down? It's never going to happen. He's going to lose. He has to strike with him. He needs to not go down. He needs to avoid the clinch. And he needs to use the only strength he has against this guy to win. I feel like nobody can go the same style with every fighter and still become a champion unless they're so far advanced at capitalizing on that. I mean, you could say Khabib, you know, he takes people down, holds them, beats them up. That's his style. But, you know, he strikes too. I mean, he hit Conor.
The Conor fight is pretty impressive.
Yeah, so, you know, sometimes there's outliers like that where they could just come in and be like, this is my style and I'm going to impose my will on you and we're going to fight my fight. It happens. But I think most champions in the sport, and I know for a fact, the great majority of fighters have to have strategy throughout their career. They're not going to go far. You're going to run into somebody who's better at you at something. You're going to. Whether it's, you know, you may say, oh, I'm the best striker, I have the best jiu-jitsu. Well, you know, you may have to fight a guy who was a 3-time NCAA champion wrestler, and he's hard to sweep, and he'll take you down at will. Well, you're going to clinch, or you're going to work on staying away from him. You know, maybe your takedown defense needs to be implemented in the fight, or you're always going to run into somebody who's got an advantage somewhere. So you have to fight a smart fight, and a smart fight has a strategy for sure. And then sometimes you get lucky. You fight an opponent, and you know your guy is better in every facet, and you know what? Feel him out, take the fight where you want. It happens, but it's not going to happen every time.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
So, with that being said, like, ideally, you have a fighter. When they're not so you have a fight camp, which is generally how long?
It varies. We like to do 8 to 10 weeks for a full camp. But, you know, sometimes guys will take a fight on short notice, or sometimes they had a 10-week camp. They won in the first minute of the first round, didn't take any damage, no injuries, and they're ready to go again in a month. So, you know, but typically 8 to 10 weeks.
Yeah, because I mean, from what I've listened to before was this: they say like 8 weeks gives you enough time to really. What I heard was like you work on things that become second nature, especially in the fight that you're fighting for that particular person.
Sure.
So if like you know that they're gonna do like that they like to do a certain sequence and then throw a high kick.
Sure.
Like you know how to like prepare for that.
Sure. If you watch footage, if you have footage.
Yes. But what about like generally what would you say would be best for people like throughout the year? You know, like, cause I think to myself, like if I was a fighter, what would be the most important things that I would want to work on? Sure. I feel like I would have an aversion or like a favoritism towards striking.
Sure.
I feel like if I were a fighter, I would want to not avoid it, but not have an emphasis on it as much, and shoot more towards things like that I'm not as good at.
Okay, I mean definitely, because we need to bring those skills up, right? But let's say you're a great striker, but you don't have much jiu-jitsu or wrestling. Let's just say it's that way. If you're a high-level striker, you become a high-level striker. If you don't strike at a high level on a regular basis, your striking will go down. It's like, for example, I promise you, DC wrestles hard in training. Is he a phenomenal wrestler? Yes. Does he have to wrestle to take down almost everybody in the UFC? No. Probably he could just wake up out of bed after vacation for 2 months and dump everybody. But I promise he still works the wrestling. But at the same time, I guarantee when he got into MMA, he worked hard on that striking. I mean, he's got some striking. Remember when he first came up through Strikeforce, and he was throwing combinations and head kicks. I mean,
no, I watched some footage the other day of it, and I was like, because like I said, I didn't watch a lot of MMA recently.
Sure.
So when I started, I now like try to look back at people that are popular,
how they came up,
and I watched some stuff about DC because I'm like, he was champ, like, but I understand he's a good wrestler, but what really makes him good? And watching him, I was like, he has pretty good stand up.
Oh yeah.
And him dumping people had me baffled.
Sure.
Literally throwing people upside down. I'm like,
I mean, he's an Olympic wrestler.
Which I should have thought was a given.
I mean, he's a big dude too. He's strong. He's not super tall, but he's an ox, you know. And he's short for heavyweight, but you know it kind of works to his advantage for his style. He gets under people and dumps them. But at the same time, you know, he came in with phenomenal wrestling. He had maybe no striking in the beginning, but by the time he fought, he had been working on that striking. Somebody brought his striking level up to a point where he could strike with some of the best MMA fighters in the world. So I promise he didn't stop wrestling altogether. So people throughout the year, when they're outside of camp, they should be trying to be as good and maintain as many skills and grow even on their strengths and their weaknesses. But there's a balance. Because if I'm a great jiu-jitsu guy and I spend 80% of my training working on my jiu-jitsu, well, my striking and my wrestling are never going to come up.
Yeah.
So you do need to work hard with that. And another thing that people don't understand is you need 3 kinds of training partners. You need someone you're better than. You need someone that's as good as you. And you need someone who can whoop you. Because if you're only dealing with people who are better than you, you're never going to develop that offense. You're just going to be on defense all the time. And if you're only whooping on everybody else, you're never going to work on your defense at all. And you need someone kind of at your level too. Because you need to be pushed. You need the repetitions of the techniques. You need to be able to flow and move and last a while with someone. So, you know, if you're a world-class striker and then you're gonna get into MMA, you should be wrestling with some good wrestlers. And you should be wrestling with some people that are about your level, you know. You know, there's always that mindset, oh, you can only get better dealing with people better than you. That isn't true. You need to be able to refine your skill sets, work on people that you can beat as well.
And it's interesting you bring that up because I feel like there's something important in that I feel like people don't realize, but also teaching people also
big time
helps you as well.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like, especially like with CrossFit, it's not at the same because you can't really, I mean, you can teach people like technique and stuff like that, but like you're not
finding your own as you're teaching it, right?
Yeah. So then like I feel like because you're helping them, you're also in turn learning something that's going to help you.
People's questions also, their input. Well, what about this? Oh, I never thought of it that way, but this is what I'm doing. And then maybe you emphasize that a little more when you teach it next time. And now everybody's doing it more identical to how you were doing it, and then people put their own spin on it. I've never seen that before. You can learn from your students all day long, teach them. One of the best ways to get good at jiu-jitsu is to teach the kids class with the professor. That's what I did as a kid. It built my game. It helped me retain what I needed. I had to show them the basics and I had to keep it simple, and it sharpened my mind. So when I roll, I'm like, I just taught this. You know, boom, there we go. So teaching, you refine your own skills and you retain the basics, and fundamentals are huge. And if you don't maintain your fundamentals, your game can fall apart. So, yeah, 100%. Teaching and instructing can definitely assist you in the mental game and recalling your techniques and pulling them out of your tool bag for sure.
Interesting. I mean, I just as someone that's been a coach and stuff in CrossFit, I never really think, because it's like the way that I think about coaching people is like, I would never say that I'm like 100% of a coach. Like, I don't
help people out.
I help people, but I don't feel like, I feel like the type of people that I coach well also have to be on the same page as me as like what I expect and like stuff like that.
Sure.
Like we were talking about earlier, you know, I like, this is just because of the way that I am. I'm a very internally motivated person.
Okay.
So like when I'm coaching somebody, I need to know that they like I don't need to worry about like, oh, are you doing everything you should?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll check up on them and stuff like that.
You prefer it if they have as much drive as you.
Yes, like they're matching the same energy that I have.
That's every coach wants that in the athlete.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like every athlete though, nobody's perfect. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got something that's slightly holding them back that they need to overcome, and it changes from guy to guy, you know, or athlete to athlete. You know, some of my athletes, it was a time issue. People depend on him. He's got to balance his life and time, and he can't put all the time that he needed to. And some guys had all the time in the world, but they don't rest. They don't recover enough. Just doesn't sleep well. Guy doesn't like to go to sleep early. Just stays up all night talking on the phone, playing games, whatever. Everybody has something they have to overcome. It could be a relationship. It could be some sort of a vice. So as a coach, you always want a driven, motivated, disciplined athlete. But, you know, from individual to individual, those capacities change. And this is why I was saying you can't know everything about the sport and then all of a sudden become a great coach. Mm-hmm. You have to be a people person, and you have to understand what people are going through. You have to put yourself in their shoes and say to yourself, what's best for his career? If I'm his MMA coach, it's what's best for his MMA career. And if he doesn't want that, or he doesn't want to prioritize that as his main focus, you're right. You kind of lose the desire to coach someone like that. You're gonna do it. You're gonna try to snap him out of it. But I'm not gonna waste my time with somebody who doesn't want to work hard.
Yeah.
You know, the guys that I allow to fight out of my gym, they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it to become champions. Mm-hmm. If someone wants to do it for fun, they're not gonna like the practice because it's just, you know, it's brutal. Mm-hmm. It's hard. I'm hard on them. Not to say that I don't have tons of my students who train with the MMA team, but to do a full fight camp, you know, year after year after year after year on my team, they're gonna, you know, if you're not in it to be a champ, after a couple fights, you're gonna say, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not worth it. Yeah. Now you may say, hey, I'm gonna come in there and train with the fighters and help them get ready and be an awesome teammate, and I'll do that forever, and that's cool. But I'm with you. If I'm gonna put a full dedicated camp together for somebody and try to manage their career from a coaching standpoint, they better want to be the best. You know, swing for the fence, you know. If you hit a triple, I'm proud of you, but let's hit for the home run, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Big time.
Yeah, it's just like, I just think to myself, like, about, like, if I try to think, I know what it takes mm-hmm. to get where you want to go, because I've had some form of success in my own way.
Sure.
So that's my expectation for you. So I shouldn't be, I might need to remind them, like, hey, make sure you're getting your recovery stuff done. Go see the chiropractor, you know, make sure your nutrition's on point. But I shouldn't have to babysit you, because you should be motivated enough to take care of those things on your own.
Sure. And reach out to me if you need my input.
Exactly.
Sure.
So, like, because, like, for me, like, I know that, like, if I'm really trying for something internally, I'm like, I need to make sure I'm doing everything I can to succeed.
Absolutely.
You know, I need to make sure that I'm eating good. I need to make sure that I'm getting, if I have aches and pains, that I'm getting worked on, whatever it may be. So obviously, you know, coaching MMA is completely different, but I know that, like, for me, you know, there's an expectation that you have between your athletes. Like, you know, we're on the same page.
Sure.
And, you know, we're going to set this plan in motion. And as long as you do everything that I'm asking of you,
sure.
And I would never tell you to do something I wouldn't do myself.
Sure.
Then we're gonna head in the right direction. And I know that, like, one thing for me is, like, you know, I've noticed is, like, having people that really trust you. Mm-hmm. Because this is what happens a lot of times, I feel like, with people in general, is, you know, if you're asking, if I ask you for help for something,
sure.
If like, hey, I'm gonna do MMA, I want you to help me, sure. I'm gonna trust you 100%. Sure. And I'm not gonna second guess that or think anything otherwise.
Sure.
It's like, I feel like a lot of people have this internal battle too much. Of they're like, well, I saw so-and-so, or I saw this, or, you know, like, you know, but what I've noticed though too is, like, if you're my coach, I need to be coachable.
Sure.
But I also need to be able to coach myself.
Oh yeah, and be able to recognize what you need, or if something's going on, or you're 100% right on that. We said that most champions are smart too, right? The fighter's smart. The coach has to be smart. If one of them is making mistakes, it's going to come out in the result.
Mm-hmm.
So, results are always going to speak louder than, analyzing their camp, or does the guy win or does he lose? And why did he lose? Why did he win? So when it comes to that as a coach, I feel like, yes, you can manage them enough, or micromanage them when you need enough to get the best out of the athlete, but that's not gonna do it. There's a motivation involved as well. Mm-hmm. They're gonna have moments where they don't want to do it anymore, or they're questioning their ability to get there, or they're scared. Their butterflies are getting to them. Maybe they're doubting themselves. Maybe they're making bad decisions that are affecting, the progress in their career. If you don't know how to motivate the individual and almost get in their head and give them that jump start that they need to make a change in their life, or to focus more on something, or admit something to themselves so they can address the issue. If you don't have that in you, you're not a persuasive and motivating individual. You're not a good leader. Mm-hmm. And a coach is a leader.
Yeah.
There's all, that's with anybody who's leading a team. It could be in business. It could be raising kids. You have to have that, or you're not going to get the best out of who you're coaching or training or building up.
Yeah. And as we finish up here, I think to myself that, that is really important to know. And I lost my train of thought. But yeah, for myself, I know that whenever I look back on a lot of those times that feel like, oh my God, this is nerve-wracking, or I got butterflies, or maybe I shouldn't do this, or you want to quit. In hindsight, I always recognize to myself, that's exactly what I needed.
Sure.
Because it's it humbles you, and then you realize that's what's gonna help me be the better version of myself, is by overcoming those situations, or motivating myself, or having someone help me have the right mindset. It's okay, I know that I'm on the right track.
Sure.
Because if you don't have those moments where you doubt yourself, or
sure.
have you're anxious about failing or anything like that,
sure.
You might be doing the wrong thing.
No, absolutely.
Because you're too comfortable. You're not.
It's not supposed to be easy.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be easy. It's never really going to be easy. And, what does the quote say? Victory is reserved for those willing to pay its price. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to win. There's no doubt about that. Someone's going to be number one. And everybody's trying to get there. So whether you can, if you can't improve, if you can't be honest with yourself, improve on things that you need, and if you can't dial in and say, at all costs, I'm going to do what needs to be done to earn that victory, then there's no real reason to try. Mm-hmm. Why? Now that's not to say everybody has to be focused on being a champion to train, because I think it's just important to train in general. I think every man should train. I think every man should train to be proficient in mm-hmm. combat sports. I think the world needs it. I think people would be happier, safer, more confident. There'd be less conflict, maybe more humble also, mm-hmm. and they'd have an outlet. So when I say anything you do, this is, I didn't coin this, anything you do, you should do it the best you can. If you're going to focus on something and dedicate to getting good at something, you should do the very best that you can. I have guys in my gym who never compete. They don't fight MMA. They do not compete in jiu-jitsu. I promise they give all of us a hard time. They're tough. They've been training like a fighter for a while. They've worked out, they've ate right, they've gotten their rest, and they go to work and have a normal job and do family stuff, but when they come in, they work their tail off and they get good. So it really depends on on your goals. But you have to be a champion or to be a coach at a professional level. There needs to be a passion, and there's a blend of necessities and prerequisites that have to go into that, and you hope that those things create enough of a freight train to victory that you get there. But you know, there's a lot of other people doing the same thing.
Yeah.
There's people working with their fighters, and they're trying to get to the same goal you are. So
yeah, it's always just a learning experience. I feel like in anything we do.
Sure.
It's just like there's always something to be improved on, to be better. Like, you know, as a human being, as a coach, when it comes to jiu-jitsu or anything, you know, it's just about being introspective. Like looking at yourself and being honest with yourself. Like, hey, I could be better here, and I want to be better here.
Sure.
And I feel like that's like the most important thing for everybody in general, not just fighting, but just in life.
Eye on the prize.
Yeah.
What do you want? You know, everybody wants something. If you don't know what you want, like you said, be introspective, find it, and then what are you gonna do? Say, oh, I'm gonna just coast out my life and not try to get there? You know, that's one way to go about it.
Some people will do that.
A lot of people, most.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on the podcast.
Big Max.
If you're listening on any of the platforms, check out, if you're local here in the Katy area, check out Gracie Barra Katy for all your martial arts needs.
All over Houston. We got teammates all over Houston. Excellent. All the professors, high level. Pop into a Gracie Baja, give them a call. Get some training in your life.
Try it out. It's definitely worth it. You'll never know if you like it if you never try it. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, just follow, give us a rating. If you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, comment, like. Let me know some topics you want to hear, maybe some guests you want to see on the podcast. And thank you for listening. See ya.